Hi, Buildable community. Welcome back to another office hours on April 24th, 2025. Excited to have you joining in or even watching on YouTube and catching up on some of these office hours we've been doing over the last couple of weeks. And today we are going to do a bit of a continuation of our office hours we had last week. In last week's session, we covered starting the development of an employee repository application where we built a table in the system to track some various information about your employees. And then I walked through the process of taking a spreadsheet and importing that spreadsheet of that employee data into Buildaible. So we created that one table last week to house these employees. Today it's gonna be a brief demo today, but we're gonna add a separate table. As I mentioned on the office hours last week, you may want to track, for instance, interactions that you have with your employees. So this would be one-on-ones that you have where you talk about areas of opportunity, areas that they're doing well. This may be, feedback that you want to track. Maybe you had to reprimand an employee or something and you want to track that information in the system. So when it comes time for annual reviews, for their raise and bonuses, you have that information documented all in one place. And, in a worst case scenario, there may be, instances where you've terminated an employee and you need that backup documentation. So that's what this will be used for. Obviously, not just the negative context, but also, the positive things like praise and great things that the employee does. You'd want to track that in the interactions as well. So this is going to be a further build out of that application that we did last week, but that's going to be kind of the third thing that we hit and the last thing that we hit on today's call. We're also going to cover some of the product updates. So we did a major release this week to Buildaible. We updated a ton of things. We added some new features. I actually did a release video for this that's posted on your YouTube, but I'm going to go ahead and go over and cover some of those as well. And then very minor thing, but on the last office hours, and when we've just kicked this off in the last month and a half of doing these, I referred to some of our clients, some of our users on the Buildaible platform as customers. And, I thought about it after the call or after the office hours last week, that's not really what I want to term our customers. I think builders is the term that I'm going to start using going forward because, it's Buildaible. We're building solutions that help businesses within Buildaible. And that's what we are. We're all working together to build these better systems, to streamline operations for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and it's more of a community. We look at our builders as the ones that are helping us drive this product forward, add the features to it. So you all are just as important as we are on the development side, actually building the product out. So I think builders is a better term. So going forward in our office hours and other communications that I use, builders is going to be what our community is called going forward, not customers, because believe me, you all are so much more than customers that are involved in this product, helping the growth, helping drive it to where it's going to go. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen now, and I'm going to go over some of the updates that we put in the release this week. Some of them you can't see because they're in the background. They're happening, behind the they're the wires connecting the system together that you may not see, visually per se. You will see some of the speed, for instance, that these back-end items are providing that we've improved, but you won't actually visually see those updates on the front end other than the speed and the effects that you're going to glean from those updates. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of those. Let me go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing this screen for a second. And I am going to move Buildaible over here and go through and start talking about some of these. And I'm going to be displaying our home base application for this. This is the application that we use internally as we are driving the product and building the product. So, I've mentioned this a few times, but we are truly using Buildaible internally here to drive the development of the product. I was actually on Twitter the other day, and I'm in a bunch of startup communities and different, builder communities, people that are actually working on products. And one of the questions that I saw raised in one of those was, Would you trust a startup that is not using its own product? And I won't really dive into that per se, but I do want to just, hit on the point that we are using Buildaible as we develop Buildaible. And we don't have a separate project management system. We don't have a separate development system. We're not using, Jira or anything like that. We are managing the development of the product within the product. So I think that's pretty cool because, it's helping us. And not only is it helping us, I know that it could help others out there. So I have Homebase up right here. This is the application that we are using. So one of the features that I talked about in last office hours that actually came from the previous office hours to that one, where one of our customers had a issue with collapsing the sidebar here. So previously, when you would click this icon in the top left, that would collapse your sidebar. It would collapse it completely. You wouldn't see the sidebar anymore. The only way that you would see the sidebar is if you actually came back up here and clicked on this icon again. So we kind of went back and talked. One of our customers was having trouble, finding and getting back to the sidebar when they collapsed it. So we went back and we talked internally, and we decided to actually change this based on that customer feedback. So now, and we've already within a week and a half implemented this into the product, and I love, the change that we made. I love the feedback that we received. So now, when you actually click this, and I'll go ahead and do it now, it doesn't collapse the sidebar completely. It just minimizes it to where it only shows you the icons. So if I hit this, now I'm only seeing the icons, and I have that extra space on my screen right here. This is pretty cool because you're going to need access to these different buttons pretty much at all times. And in some ways, didn't really make sense, our initial decision of clicking this and having it collapse completely. So now, when you do minimize your sidebar, you can see solely the icons. Now, we've implemented this in the last week and a half. There are a few things we're going to do to improve it. For instance, if you can tell, the alignment's a little off down here with these icons, so we're working on the alignment right now. Additionally, we are working on where if you hover over the icon, you will see the text of what that icon will do. So if I were to expand this further, that's all you have to do is click back up there again to fully expand it. You can see this is for the corporate documents table. This is for the email templates, releases, and then these down here are for your reports, your dashboards, your settings, and share. Well, as of right now, when you collapse that, you would have to know what the icons actually do when you click into them. But we will be implementing that when you hover, it shows the text of what that icon is. So the team's working on that right now. Either way, this was some great feedback from our customer, as I mentioned, and I personally, I love the new look of it. I wish we would have done this way in the beginning, but we didn't. But now, with that feedback, we've gotten to this place. So that's an awesome feature that was just recently implemented. Another feature that we implemented was, let me actually jump out of this application and go into our employee repository that we built last week. So this is the employee repository we worked on the last week's office hours, and we only have this one table in here. So one implementation that we also did, and this was actually per my feedback to the development team, if you open up a record and you go in, you want to customize the layout of this form right here. You can hit this down arrow as long as you have developer mode turned on and you're an administrator in the application, and you can hit edit form. Now, previously, when you go into edit form, this sidebar would stay, and then another sidebar would appear on this side of your page for the customization of the form. Now, the challenge with that is, while you were customizing that form, you were only limited to the space between the two sidebars to customize it. But as you can see, when you're actually using Buildaible, you don't have a right sidebar. So I asked the development team, hey, when you go in to customize the form, and we're going to pop this sidebar over on the right-hand side for you to customize it, let's completely hide this left sidebar because you don't need it anymore, and that gives you the full space to see how your form is going to look. So as you'll see, when I go into edit form here, the left sidebar now goes away. And now you have the full space of what the form would look like while you're customizing it. If you save or hit cancel, that sidebar now reappears and the other sidebar goes away. So let's go into that one more time. So now, again, while you're customizing, you don't have the left sidebar. Now here's one other piece of feedback, for our community that I gave to the development team. Why do we have it on the right side? If we always have a left sidebar, when we go into customizing this form, instead of completely hiding this left sidebar, let's replace it with this sidebar right here, except on the side. So that way it's consistency working left to right. So that will be a change that's going to be coming in the near future. Just really moving, this sidebar over to this side, but it's still going to have the full functionality of the screen view that you have there. So that should be implemented in the next release or two. Go back into the employee repository. So let me look at my list. So we made some major updates to back-end record filtering. I know that sounds, tech speak, but basically what that means is when you're going into your various tables and it's pulling all of these records of data right here, we improved the filtering process and how fast it is. We wanted to make it extremely fast so that you can get access to your data quickly. We don't want you waiting on loading times and speed and stuff like that. So that's an improvement that we did there. It also has to do with our filter presets that we have here, which I can dive into in a later session. But put it this way, we're trying to make the product move as fast as possible for you. You have a job to do. You don't have time to wait on something to provide you with your data. We're working on speed, flexibility, and functionality right now. So that's one thing you won't really see in front of you. You'll just get the effects of it, of the speed of those records, being on your screen a lot quicker. We worked on some different of the filter preset bugs. So there were some different bugs having to do with, X equals Y, show this data, etc. So we worked on those filters. So again, may not necessarily see that. You'll just see the right data coming, coming onto your screen based on the filters that you've created. A very, very minor one, and this does not matter so much for our existing customers, but previously when you were going to sign up for Buildaible, if you stopped in the middle of the process of signing up and you came back to finish signing up, you would have to start all over. We have updated or implemented a new process now in the workflow to where if you start signing up and you come back later and you're using the same email, you can start where you left off to finish signing up for the product. So a very minor thing, but that's more so for new customers. We made some major updates recently to numeric fields. So numeric fields had an option to set how many decimal places, and this included summary fields as well, decimal places that you wanted to show. That wasn't functioning correctly, so we made updates to that, and now it will display the decimal places correctly. Here's another good example. So on our single select and our multi-select fields, so that would be a field like right here for shirt sizes for these employees that I have. We added two new features to this. So if that field has turned on the functionality to allow users to add new options, there is this add new option button directly within the field here where you can click in, add a new option, select a color, and now that option will be listed in this field now. Additionally, let me just refresh real quick my page here. If you do have something selected in a single select or a multi-select field and you want to deselect it, we added this X here on these fields so that you can clear out that value and then save. So that value is no longer there. So that's a new update that we made recently. Go ahead and discard these changes. Another update that was made was on these reports like this, we call these table reports because they're just tables of data. They're not charts, they're not pie charts, bar charts, or anything like that. They're not Kanban boards, which I haven't set one up in this app yet, or calendars, which again, I have not set up. These are table reports. So we previously gave you the ability to move the size of these columns around. However, if you would have left the page and then came back to the page, the columns would be set to what they were before you reduced or increased the size of them. Now we are actually storing those sizes in the backend when you make those changes, so that when you come back, it stays how you had set it up before. We don't want you to have to stretch and skew the columns every single time that you go into the report. So if you do it one time, it should save it to the back end, so that way it's the same way the next time you come in. Let's see. We also, going back to numeric fields for a second, we also implemented the functionality because it was throwing a little bug where if you choose comma separation, like if you have a number of 1,000 and you want a comma after the 1, you can choose that in the field settings. It wasn't placing the commas correctly. Now it is. So we've resolved that in the latest release as well. Let's see, column resizing, drag reorder, table filter. And that's the majority of it. There's a bunch of other backend updates that we did, and I posted those on the YouTube video the other day with these release notes, and I sent out an email to our builder community of all the updates. So that's a lot of the updates that we've done so far. There is, I guess, one additional one, and that would be sometimes when you were coming into these cards here after you had set up the board for the board or the calendar, it would pop this window again for you. Now that's been resolved as well, so if you've set it up, it won't do that again. And then there is, trying to think, there's one other one off the top of my, when you add, so actually, let's go ahead and do this as part of the demo right here. So because I can show you an additional feature that we implemented recently when I do this. So diving into the demo, as I mentioned in the beginning, we built this application in the last office hours where we created this employees table and this employee repository, and we added in some various information or fields about our employees, and then we imported the data in. And as mentioned at the beginning of the call, on today's call, we're going to go ahead and add in a new table for interactions where you can track when you have communications with your employees. So that way you have a central repository of all this, kind of like a employee file or employee folder, except in Buildable. So let's do this real quick, and I'll show you that new feature that we implemented. So if I click right here, the plus sign, I'm going to create a new table, and I'm going to create it, and it's going to be called interactions. So let's go ahead and hit the plus sign. We're going to give the table a name, interactions. A single record, so a single one in this table, when I actually type something about an employee and store it for them, is going to be called an interaction. So it's just the non-plural form of the table is what the record name is asking for, but you can call it anything you want. And then I'm going to go ahead and click here and actually choose an icon. So let's go ahead, actually, maybe here, let's use the little phone icon, and we'll make this one green. So here is where it's going to take me into the next feature that we implemented. And when I hit create table, it's going to create the interactions table. And currently, there are no fields on that table. So again, for speed, after you create a table with no fields, it should pop you into a new pop-up that comes up asking you for your first field. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's see if it was implemented by the development team. So I'm going to hit create table. Okay, so now interactions, you can see over there, and it immediately took me into creating a new field. So not only do we want to speed up the data when you're using the application, how quickly you get it and how quickly you can work, we want to do the same thing with the development process. We want to save you time in the development process. We don't want you to have to click create new table and then go into adding fields, with multiple other clicks. This, by popping this window up right here for you to create your own fields, saved you probably 3 or 4 clicks right there. And over the course of building multiple applications over the course of a year, saving 3 or 4 clicks here and there can put a lot of time back in your day. So That's a new implementation that we just did in the latest release. Now, let's dive into this a little bit. Now, I've probably built, I don't know, 1,000+ interactions tables in my lifetime of doing development for various different clients. So I'm just going to throw a couple basic fields in here so we can we can start doing this tracking. And then the last component that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to link interactions to your employees. So that way when you enter an interaction about your employee, you can open their employee record and you can see any interactions that you've ever entered for them on that same employee record. So to start off, let's go ahead and let's make a date. So, what date is this interaction? So I'm going to give the field name date. We could call it, we don't have to call it date. We could call it like interaction date. If I could spell interaction. And then we would choose a field type of date. Additionally, you could take that a step further and you could say, okay, maybe actually I want to do date time. So maybe I want this to say interaction date / time. We're going to say make the field required, and then to save me from typing at times, I'm going to say default current date and time. So that means when I go to create a new interaction in the system, this field's already going to be populated with the current date and time. I can change that if I would like to, but it would save me some time if I'm, if I don't need to change that and I just want to go in and start punching information about the interaction in. Now, as we've done on previous office hours, we're going to add additional fields to this table. So instead of hitting done here, I'm going to actually hit the plus sign, because what that's going to do is that's going to add the interaction date and time as a field to this table, and then it's going to refresh the pop-up to allow me to create a new field. So let's go ahead and do that. And that's been added. You can see that in the background here. And now it's asking me, okay, what's the next field that I want? So for this, I would say, let's do type. Let's do what type of interaction. And let's make that a single select field. So this could be, positive feedback. And we'll make that green. It could be negative feedback, or like area of opportunity. Kind of whatever you want in here. Maybe it's going to be a 1v1. Maybe you're going to have something like an annual review. And you could add other options if you like there. But I'm going to turn this on, as I mentioned, with that new feature that we added where you're using the drop-down if users are allowed to create new options. You would have to have this turned on. So let me go ahead and turn that on, because there may be other options that we want to create in the future real easily without having to come into the field settings. So I'm going to go ahead and add this field. And now, let's make a notes field. Notes/details, or we'll just call it details. And for that, I'm going to have paragraph, because I'm going to want to be able to, type out a blurb of text and stuff about this interaction with the employee. Lastly, let's add a field for who I'm just trying to think what I want to term this. So this would be like if I was giving an interaction, or doing an interaction with one of my employees, I'm going to link it to that employee, but I want to track who did that. So who delivered. Probably not the best term for this, but we'll just leave it like that for now. So I'm doing this because I want to show you that in this scenario, I would choose a user field. Now, what is a user field? A user field allows you to choose any of the users within the application there that as the ones that delivered the news, the feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and choose user in this regard. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit done. because that's pretty much the fields that we would need for this, except for one, which I will show you afterwards of how we're going to link it to an employee. Now, on this sidebar here, before we actually get into new interaction and customizing the form and adding that field, very, very minor, but I've mentioned this on other office hours. This is user preference. So each user can determine which tables are listed in what order over here. So actually, in my case, I'm going to drop interactions down. So that way it starts at employees and then goes to interactions there. Now let's go in before we actually do some linking and create a true relational database where interactions are related to employees. Let's go in and just click new interaction for right now and look at what this form looks like. So if you look at this form, we've got our interaction date and time, type, which has these options that we created, details, and then who delivered. Now I'm the only user in this application right now, so that's why it's only listing me, but once I add other users into the application, they would be listed down here. And fun thing I just noticed, default date and time is not working on that field right now. So that's a great thing for the development team to give them to get resolved. So we'll work on that and get that resolved hopefully by next office hours. Now, the reason that I brought you into this form here before we took it a step further is I want to customize it. So if I'm on this form now, I can hit this down arrow and hit edit form. And now I can customize the look and feel. So I want to go ahead and make this date and time field a little smaller. I'm going to make this type field smaller, move it up. And then I am going to make this who delivered a bit smaller, move it up here as well. And we will go ahead and save this. So now the form looks like that. Now, the only problem currently, what we have not built is I can enter an interaction in the system now. I can choose a date, I can choose a time, I can select what type of interaction it is, I can select myself, and I can enter some details in here. However, there's no way for me to link it to one of the employees back here. So if I go to an employee as of right now before we do this, and open up an employee record, it's like Quintilla here, I don't see anything having to do with interactions down here. And this will make more sense here in a second, but there's no link between the employees and interactions. So let's go ahead and let's create that link. This is why it is called a relational database system, because to link two tables together in tech speak is called relationships. You have to build a relationship between the two tables. Now, in Buildable, we call this link a record fields. Link a record. So, if I would like to choose one of these employees or choose Quintilla here on the interactions, I need to create a link a record field on the interactions table. That would make it, again, tech speak, that would make the employees table the parent and the interactions table the child. So a parent can have many children. In other words, an employee could have many interactions written about them and have all those interactions linked back to that employee. So let's go ahead and do that right now. It's real easy to do this. So if we go back to the interactions table, we are going to hit manage fields right here, new field, and we're just going to call this employee name. The field type we are going to choose is going to be link a record. So I'm choosing that right here. And now it is saying, okay, we understand you want to link a record. Which table would you like to link values from? So this is pretty easy because we only really have one other table in this, and that's going to be employees. Which field would you like to look up? All this is asking you is, when you hit that drop down to select an employee, how would you like to choose that employee? What field from the employees table would you like to choose? Pretty straightforward, but in this case, we're going to use employee name. So let's go ahead and hit done. And now Scroll over here, you can see we have an employee name field. So if I hit new interaction, I'm able to select the values like I did before, and then I'm able to choose one of my employees now from the other table. So we were messing with Quintilla, so there's Quintilla right there. So I could select that if I'd like. Now, there's one other thing I want to do before we actually create an interaction, and I show you how this all functions. When I select Quintilla, one of the options that I would like to see is what date were they hired on this interaction. I can go to the employees table and open up that employee, and I can see right here they were hired on 1/3/2023. Ooh, and there's something else we see now. Now that we've created that link a record field, we now see interactions down here. So this is going to be a report that's going to show you any interactions in this table that are linked to this employee. So you'll be able to, as I mentioned, open up an employee and see all interactions directly underneath them. So before we create an interaction and see what that looks like, let's make it so we can also see what date they were hired on the interactions table. So to do that, we need to create another new field. For that, I would go into Manage Fields, New Field, and I'm going to call this Date Hired. Now, previously, to link these tables together, I created the employee name as a link a record field. But I don't want to do that for this because I don't want to choose the employee name and then have to choose from a separate dropdown a date they were hired. No, I want to be able to choose the employee name and have it automatically pull from that employee what date they were hired for this new field that we're creating. So to do that, instead, I am going to select a lookup field. A lookup field is a read-only field that only pulls data from the parent table based on a selection that you make in the link a record. So you can't change the value in this lookup field on this table. You can only change it back on its main record, but it pulls that value. So I gave it a name of date hired. I'm choosing lookup. And now it's asking me, well, what's the primary lookup field? Really, we should change the text of that. It's really asking you what link a record field do you want to key off of. So I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot of that so I can talk to my developers about that. And in this case, we are going to choose the employee name. So that's the only option that we have in here because it only shows link a record fields. So in this case, I'll choose employee name. And then just like, sorry, I have to misclick there, click back and look up, select employee name. Now, just like when we were setting up the link a record field, what field would we like to look up? In this case, I'm already calling it date hired, so I want to look up the date hired from the employees table. So go ahead and select that, and I'm going to hit done. And it will add that field to the table here, which is right here. So now if I hit new interaction, let's do something real quick before we test this out. Let's move these up next to these fields since we just added them. So to do that, I'll hit this down arrow, edit form, make this a bit smaller, move it up, this a bit smaller, move that up, and now I'm going to go ahead and save that. Okay, oh, one other thing, the section's real big right now. I don't like all this white space. Let's go right back and edit this form, and let's just make this section a bit smaller. And save. There we go. That looks a bit better. Okay. Let's create an interaction in the system now and see how it actually displays back on the employee. So to do this, let's select a date. That is one thing, even though the default value is not working, if you hit right here and hit just today, that's going to pop the current date and current time in there. So you don't even need to choose it from these options here. You just hit today and there's the current date and time. But we will get it resolved that if you set the field at default to this, it automatically does that. I'm going to go ahead and select the option here. Let's give positive feedback. Let's stay positive on this call today. So positive feedback, I delivered it. If you notice, it shows my little picture there. That's the picture that I've set up in my profile up here. So that's another cool thing with the user fields. Shows your picture. And then I'm going to select, let's do, since we've been talking about Quintilla so much, let's go ahead and select that one. The thing to mention on these fields, these link or record fields, is this icon right here shows you the table it's linked to. So see that icon as the folder? That's the same icon as this employees table over here. What you also notice is when I selected Quintilla, it pulled down the date hired from that employee record. So this is what I was talking about you can't edit it on this form. You can edit it back on the employee, but it pulls that data down. This is the beauty of relational databases, so you don't have to double enter information. If you connect the data, that data can be pulled through the rest of the application, so it doesn't have to be entered multiple times. This is great for, I mean, so many different use cases, but think about if you're invoicing and you want to select a customer and have it pull down their billing emails, their pay cycles of net 10, net 15, net 30, all those various things. You set those up one time on the parent record, and then use those as lookup fields on any other tables, and it pulls that data down for you, so you don't have to key it in multiple times. Let's just put in a quick details here. We'll say Quintilla is a valuable member of our team. They went above and beyond for customers and stayed after hours to get the job done. Until having trouble typing it now. Until it deserves a major raise. So let's go ahead and save this interaction. And now I can see the interaction on this table, positive feedback for Quintilla, employee names all the way over here, date hired. On reports like this, it adds them based on the order that you added fields, but you can always go into manage fields here and move these around if you'd like. So I'm going to drag employee name up to the top, date hired, maybe type. Actually, let's move interaction date and time first, and then who delivered this, and save changes. So now it's reordered, and that will stay that way. So great, the interaction looks great on this table. If I open up that employee record, I can see that information here, and then, interaction record. But now, if I also go back to the employees table, and I open up Quintilla here, I will see right down below that interaction that we just created. So this allows you to go to one place, that employee, and see all the interactions having to do with that employee, rather than going to the interactions table and searching for that employee, which you still can do, but this creates essentially one file in one system. So as you add more tables to this, for instance, maybe on next week's call or one of our following office hours, we'll add a bonuses and raises table. And then you would have a separate tab here for bonuses and raises to see all the bonuses and raises for that employee, etc. This is the beauty of a relational database system. It's the beauty of Buildaible, how fast we can create these, and you can actually get to work and start utilizing the system. It just, I know it's a little crazy at times for non-tech users to think about building these types of systems, but that's the power that we're trying to bring to Buildaible. We're trying to make all of our builders capable of building a system that can run their business, can streamline their business, can get them out of spreadsheets, and can get them just into a better system that can be accessed by anyone from anywhere on their team, as long as they have their username and password and are allowed to access it. So that's the beauty of Buildaible. That's what you can do, and this has so many different use cases. Buildaible can be used across any business in any industry to do pretty much anything that business needs. So that's going to be our office hours for today. Thank you for joining, for watching along on YouTube, and happy building. Keep sending us feedback. Feedback is what's going to grow this product, and you all are just as important as we are in developing it. Thanks a lot for joining. Have a good one.